I just watched the Elizabeth Smart documentary, and there are 5 things that I wish they would have covered that they didn't. Or they were briefly mentioned and they weren't really covered that much. The first thing is, I wish that they would have focused more on how her religious upbringing affected her inability to be an advocate for herself. I feel like they barely scratched the surface of how purity culture and shame and brainwashing in general and her susceptibility to brainwashing affected her participation in her own rescue. The second thing I wish they would have touched more on is how trauma and shock can cause you to react unexpectedly. There are so many misunderstandings about what it's like to be the victim of a crime. The truth is, when you are in shock, you don't react the way that you think you're going to. I think it's so easy to listen to what victims did and think, oh, I would do this or I would do that. But the truth is, you really do not know what you would do until it's you. And then you find out. I won't make this situation about myself because my situation was completely different. But when I told my story on TikTok of how I had a stalker who was a complete stranger, people were questioning everything I did. It was really surprising, but it was also really eye-opening because we're definitely not as far along in society as I thought we were in terms of our understanding of how true crime works and how victims just don't react the way you expect them to. When something bad like this happens to you, you automatically operate in this system of disbelief. Like, how is this really happening? There's no way. There's no way this is really happening. And it's really hard to explain that to people who just don't know what it's like. I think that this is something that they could have covered more and didn't. Number 3 really pissed me off, and that is the fact that the police did not listen to her sister. She literally told them who the perpetrator was, and she could have been rescued so much earlier if they had just believed her. They did not talk enough about this in the documentary, and they definitely should have. Because how would it feel being rescued and finding out that your sister literally told them months ago who it was? The 4th thing I wish they would have covered is how she moved on after she was rescued. I read her book. I've been following her for years. I think she's amazing. But I do think that there's something to be said for explaining how you healed from something so serious. I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing what exactly she did to move on from such a traumatic experience. I feel like they just had her saying that she used to be scared and she used to be traumatized, and now she's not. She's empowered. She likes to go running alone and she feels strong. And I'm like, where was the interim? It left me wondering what the 20 years in between those things look like. What therapy did you get that was helpful? What realizations did you have that were meaningful? I would have loved to hear Elizabeth talk more about how she moved on from this childhood belief that her purity and her innocence were inherently tied to her worth, to the very empowered advocate that she is today. And the last thing is, I wish that this documentary had given her a platform to speak more about how she talks to her kids about her experience and what she thinks that parents should tell their kids about consent and about safety, all the things. And listen, while I know that Elizabeth Smart has her own platform and she speaks about these things on her own time, it does make me wonder why Netflix produced this for like a huge, popular, mainstream audience and didn't include some of these very major things. It felt quick, it felt rushed, and it felt sanitized. Overall, I think that this documentary could have been more thoughtful, and that's just my personal opinion. What do you think?